Hey guys, welcome to the video. Salt here. We're going to be doing something a little bit different today. We're going to be doing a tier list for all of the pets in the game. So for anyone that hasn't watched me before, over the past 2 months, we've been going into great detail into every pet in the game. We've done a video on every pet, and we've done a lot of research, a lot of time going over them. And so I kind of wanted to end the whole series with a tier list. I thought it'd be fun. I thought it'd be fun to do a tier list at the very end. So that's why we're doing this. Something I wanted to add for people that have watched me before and have watched part of the pet series is that when we were doing the Kubros, like at the very beginning of the pet series, I was saying that Tenacious Bond was not reading Hunter Synergy. Like they did the patch and they did the rework for companions, and when that first happened, Hunter Synergy wasn't reading with Tenacious Bond, and so like a lot of the Kubros couldn't actually activate Tenacious Bond. Well, that has been fixed. I said that in a few videos, but for some reason, if you haven't caught that, that is fixed. So like Tenacious Bond is actually reading Hunter Synergy now. So a lot of pet, not just the Kubros, but a lot of the pets can now activate Tenacious Bond because of that. All right, so let me describe how we're going to be doing this. We're going to be pulling up one pet at a time, and I'm going to be saying what this pet does and what his use cases are. And then we'll be putting them into a tier. And how we're going to do the tiers is that S tier is going to be build defining pets that are used frequently in the game. There are a lot of Warframes that use these really powerful pets. A tier is going to be build defining pets, but are maybe just used less frequently. Maybe there's only a few Warframes that use these pets in their like min-maxed builds. B tier is going to be pets that are good to use. These are good pets that have good effects. They just are not necessarily always the min-maxed pets to use. Or if they are, they're only for like 1 or 2 Warframes, really. C tier is when we start going below average, because B tier is what I would consider average pets. But C tier is when we start going below average. These are pets that are not really that great, but maybe they have one like little niche that could possibly make them good uses for some niche Warframes. And then D tier is when we get into like the bad. These are the pets that don't really serve a purpose in the game currently. Okay. And then utility tier, of course, sorry. Utility tier is, I added this tier because there were 2 pets specifically that are good pets. They just don't have an end game purpose. And I didn't want to kind of disgrace them by putting them in D tier. Because you would still use them a lot. You just won't take them into like endurance content or level cap. So I added the utility tier for those 2 pets. All right. And also, as we go through the pets, every single type of pet, so like Sentinels, Kavats, Vulpaphilas, I'm going to explain the generals of that family of pet. And yeah, so we'll start with Sentinels. We're going to start with Deathcube, of course, but we're going to go over what Sentinels in general do. So Sentinels have access to robotic mods. Some notable robotic mods are Guardian, which restores all your shields, Manifold Bond, which reduces the cooldown of pet abilities, and Primed Regen, which allows for a downtime of only 25 seconds, and also Spare Parts, which is a loot mod, and it can be combined with Manifold Bond to go off even more often. So those are some of the things that Sentinels provide you. Those are just some of them. There's more than that, of course, but I thought those were the notable ones. So we'll start off with Deathcube here. Deathcube is going to be the best pet for energy generation through his precept with the same name, Energy Generator. The use case for this pet, of course, is going to be on frames who need maximum energy generation. So I think Deathcube can either be an A or S tier. I'm going to put him in S tier, but I think he could also be in high A tier. So Deathcube has Energy Generator. However, all pets can use Synth Deconstruct, and Synth Deconstruct, when you mix it with Equilibrium, can also be a really good energy generator on pretty much every pet. So every pet can be a good energy generator. It's just that you would have to also be using Equilibrium, which can sometimes be an issue for some Warframe builds. and that's where Deathcube has an upper hand. Deathcube also has an upper hand where he can use his energy generator and synth deconstruct with equilibrium. So he can kind of like stack everything on top of each other. And so that's why I'm going to put him in S, but he could also be high A just because every pet can generate some energy. All right. Next, we're going to be going over Shade. Shade grants invisibility to your Warframe. However, there's a caveat to that where you cannot shoot or melee attack. If you shoot or melee attack, you will break invisibility. But you can cast abilities all day long. So Shade, you're going to be comboing with casting Warframes. So I'm thinking off the top of my head, Protea. Protea is a Warframe that basically never has to shoot or melee. She's going to get all of her kills through using abilities. So Shade is a very good pet for those casting Warframes. Now, I'm going to put him in A tier. I do think that he is build defining, and I think he's amazing, and I would put him in S tier. However, there is another pet that does about the same thing as Shade, except he does it in a... He does it the same way, but he has differences about him that I think make him slightly better. And when we get to him, it's going to be the Hurus Kubro. So, of course, the Hurus Kubro is not a Sentinel. He's a beast, and so he can't use Guardian. So that's like the one case where I think Shade may be better than the Hurus, is that if you really needed Guardian for some reason to restore your shields, then maybe you can consider Shade better than the Hurus Kubro. But the Hurus Kubro is going to have a lot more offensive capabilities than Shade does. And so for that reason, I downgraded Shade to A tier, just because I believe that Hurus, when we get to it, will be S tier. All right, next we have Helios. Helios is going to be the pet that we put in utility tier. So he's going to scan items and enemies into your codex, which is a great use. You know, the new content that just came out with like Scaldra and Tekrot, I've been using Helios every single day. Even though he doesn't have like endgame potential, anytime there's new content that comes out, you should be whipping Helios out, and he's going to be, you know, getting all your scans for you. So I think Helios is a great pet. I didn't want to relegate him to D tier, and so that's why I added the utility tier for Helios. And for the next pet that we're going to be going over, Oxalis. So Oxalis helps with mining, fishing, and plant gathering. Now, of course, mining, fishing, and plant gathering is not really for endgame content. You know, you're not bringing Oxalis into level cap to help mine. So he's not really for that. And that's why he's in the utility tier. He serves a great purpose in the game. It's just not for like endgame endurance content. All right. We have Nautilus next here. Nautilus is going to be the best melee primer in the game. He groups enemies up through one of his precepts, which helps him be the best melee primer in the game. That being said, that grouping effect actually has a 30-meter range. It has a 30-meter range, but it only pulls enemies 15 meters. But after a couple of groups, they can eventually get close to you. And that grouping ability helps him be the best melee primer in the game. In the past, I had thought that Dirija was the best melee primer, although when I did side-by-side testing between Nautilus and Dirija, I did come to the conclusion that Nautilus is going to be the best melee primer because of the grouping effect of him. He also has another like little niche benefit where on Railjack missions, he has a precept that helps him repair things for you, which is kind of cool. So, of course, Railjack's not really endgame, but that's just like another little niche that Nautilus has. So I think Nautilus is easily S tier. I believe he is at the top of S tier. He's a very good pet. The priming that he does, so the best ranged primer in the game right now is the Hound. However, Nautilus is also an okay ranged primer too. So he's going to be the best melee primer, but he's an okay ranged primer because he's pulling dudes from 30 meters away. Which is pretty far. So, I mean, that's also good for range, especially like close range stuff, maybe like shotguns, flamethrowers, things like that. I mean, even like rifles would be good too, though. So he just is, he's so good. He's not going to beat the Hound in ranged priming, but he's pretty good for range priming. He's the best for melee priming. So yeah, that's the use case for Nautilus there. Sorry about that. Let me turn my page. And we'll go to the next pet, which is going to be Dirija. Dirija is best to compare versus Nautilus because they basically do the same thing, except Dirija just does not have the pull effect that Nautilus does. So that pull effect is really what makes Nautilus do better at priming and for you to kill enemies because of that. However, after the new content dropped with Tekrot and the Scaldra stuff, a lot of those maps and tile sets are very claustrophobic. They're multi-stories. There's a lot of small rooms, a lot of like things people can get stuck on. And it really got me thinking, because when I had done the side-by-side testing with Dirija versus Nautilus, I did that on Void Mott, which is very open tile sets where things don't get stuck on anything really. So I think on tile sets and maps where that pull from Nautilus can actually be a hindrance, I think Dirija might still be top tier. Now, I didn't do the testing like, Nautilus versus Dirija on Tekrot maps specifically. So this is like more of a thought. I think Dirija could possibly be better on those tile sets where the pull can be a hindrance. Let me know what you think, though. Let me know what you think there. So I think Dirija still has a place in the S tier. So I think, again, Death Cube I think is at the bottom of S tier. I think he could also be A too, but we'll keep him at the bottom of S tier. All right, let me go. Next pet is going to be Jin. So what does Jin do? He has low and almost no downtime when he dies. So he basically insta-revives because of one of his precepts. It's kind of nice, but that's pretty much it. That's like pretty much his whole shtick, is that he insta-revives. To a certain point, you have to pick up energy orbs, but as long as there's energy orbs, he's going to be pretty much insta-reviving. Kind of nice. It can provide consistency to your build because you're going to have like uptime on your Jin. More uptime than usual on other Sentinels. It's just not that great of an effect because like all these other Sentinels have access to primed regen, which gives them only a 25-second downtime. And if you mix that with bond mods, they can be even less. It's like these guys can almost come close to like a insta-revive already. And like that's pretty much the only thing that Jin really provides you. And so that's why I think Jin is going to be the first pet that we put in the D tier. Yeah, it's just not that great of an effect. And the other, and even if you compare that effect to like the other ones are almost doing the same thing anyway. So, okay, that's why Jin is there. Let's move on to Carrier. Carrier is going to increase your Warframe ammo max and ammo pickup, and he also has a potential crate breaker build. Now the use case for Carrier is comboing him with powerful weapons that have poor ammo economy. Things like the Kuva Brahma, the Proboscis Cernos, things like that. So I think Carrier is B tier. I think he's really good. I think he can make you powerful if you're using those really powerful weapons. I just feel like as the game progresses and more of the best weapons in the game are Incarnins, where like ammo doesn't really matter too much, like slowly Carrier's power is decreasing because more and more people are using Incarnins as like more and more people are using Incarnins, and also more and more of those Incarnins are being like the top weapons in the game. The Brahma is not really considered the best weapon anymore. So I think Carrier is really good, but he's just kind of slowly being phased out because of Incarnins. Also note that the Crate Breaker build is a bit sensitive. So like his precept that has the Crate Breaker, it doesn't work super well with a lot of mods. And so a lot of times when you're using that Crate Breaker build, you kind of have to focus the entire build around that Crate Breaker. So a lot of times you're either using the Crate Breaker like entirely, like that's the entire focus of your build, or you're not using it. Just something to note there about Carrier. All right, let's move on to Worm. Worm prevents a negative status effect from happening to you every 5 seconds. Now, recently they also added that Manifold Bond finally works with this. That's kind of cool. 5 seconds is already a really short cooldown. I don't feel like you even need Manifold Bond to mix with Worm for it to be like even better. I mean, just don't stand in the fire. But yeah, Worm's pretty good because of that. There are a lot of Warframes where they're pretty much immune to everything in the game except for statuses, right? I'm looking at Zephyr specifically is pretty much immune to everything. She's immune to projectiles. She's immune to melee as long as she's hovering off the ground. The only thing that can really hurt Zephyr is statuses. And there's other Warframes that are like that too. A lot of invisibility Warframes are similar, right? Like they can't be targeted because they're invisible, but maybe they can still be hit by AoE statuses. And so for those specific frames, Worm is really top tier on them. So I think Worm is easily A tier. I don't think he's S tier, but I think he's A tier. And a use case is any kind of frame, of course, that wants status protection. Alrighty, let's move on to Taxon. I'm going to turn my little page I have here. Okay, Taxon is a fun one. So Taxon has shield restoration, and it can be cast more frequently when you mix it with Manifold Bond. So there's going to be another pet that is very comparable to Taxon called the Raxacubro. The Raxacubro also restores shields. He restores shields about once every 5 to 10 seconds. The Rax's cooldown is weird. Sometimes it's 5, sometimes it's 10 seconds. But it's every 5 or 10 seconds the Raxa gives you some shields back. Taxon has also a pretty bad cooldown, but with Manifold Bond, he could technically machine gun cast the shield regen, which is really powerful. There's an issue, though, with Taxon where he does really bad damage, and that's important because the way his shield regen works is, the way his precept works is he does damage with it, and it converts that damage into shields up to 200. So you can get up to 200 shields back, but if he's hitting something that has armor, it's going to give you like single-digit shields back, like 5, which is complete garbage and not even usable. So the only way Taxon is usable is if you are full armor stripping. You have a consistent full armor strip. So for that reason, I'm going to be putting him in C tier. He has a use. It's just a very narrow use. You have to be using a frame that, wants to shield gate, because shield regeneration is good for shield gators. That shield gating frame also needs to have a consistent full strip. So if those conditions are met, and you have to use Manifold Bond, so if those conditions are met, Taxon can be good. It's just a very narrow condition window. Okay, so those are all the Sentinels. We're going to have the Moa next, and actually what I'm about to say is kind of true to the Hound too. So Moas and Hounds also have access to robotic mods, but they can also use link mods, which increases their survivability depending on the Warframe. So like if you're using a Naros and you're linking your health, like your pet could have like 12,000 HP. So it really depends on the Warframe that you're linking, but link mods can increase your survivability of those pets. And then the Moa and the Hound also have large choice of precepts. They have 8 precepts each, which is really nice. No, okay, enough of that. So let's go over the Moa here. Like I said, 8 precepts, so you have a big choice of different things you can set your Moa up to do. I'm going to name, I think, 3 of the strongest of those precepts. The first one being Whiplash Mine. It's a grouping tool. It's kind of cool. It's not as good as a grouping tool as Nautilus's is, but it's still a grouping tool. It's okay. There's Anti-Grav Grenade, which is a crowd control tool. It's not as good of a crowd control as a lot of other pets' crowd controls, but it's still okay. And then Stasis Field. Stasis Field I'm going to spend a little bit to explain here. So Stasis Field is a 60% damage reduction. This is going to be good for shield and adaptation warframes. So on a health and armor warframe, 60% damage reduction is not super useful because health and armor warframe, if you build correctly, you should be at 90% damage reduction. And past 90% damage reduction is extreme diminishing returns. So 60% damage reduction on top of your 90% that you should be building yourself out for is going to give you almost nothing. However, shield and adaptation warframes, they can also get to 90% damage reduction. However, adaptation works differently. They have to take damage to eventually get to 90% damage reduction. So Stasis Field, starting you at a 60% damage reduction and like continuing with 60% damage reduction plus whatever your adaptation gets you to, can be kind of a really good insurance on shield and adaptation warframes. 2 warframes that I'm very familiar with that are shield and adaptation warframes would be Hildren and Shield Harrow. So, the video that I did for the Moa, I did not use Stasis Field. It was kind of like in retrospect, I was like, oh, Stasis Field's actually really good on shield and adaptation. So yeah, keep that in mind. If you watch the Moa video, I didn't use Stasis Field, but on, in retrospect, I think Stasis Field's really good on those specific Warframes. So Moa, I think I'm going to put him in B tier. He has a lot of uses, like he has 8 precepts you can choose. I only named 3 of them, but he has like some other ones that do other things. He has a lot of uses. Not all of the uses are like super top tier. Like it's not going to be the top best grouping ability for that one that I said. It's not going to be the best crowd control for the one that I said. The stasis field damage reduction thing is kind of cool. I don't know if it would be an auto pick for like Hildren or Harrow, but it would still be a really good combo with Hildren or Harrow. So I think he's pretty solid in B tier there, the Moa. Okay, next we're going to have Vulpaphylas. Let me get my paper here and I'll explain what Vulpaphylas do in general. So this is going to be all 3 of the Vulpaphylas. They have access to a mod called Martyr Symbiosis, which grants your Warframe another invulnerability gate. It kind of grants them another 1 second invulnerability gate. Vulpaphylas also have access to the Kavat mods, which include Swipe. So their Swipe converts their basic attack into hitting up to 5 dudes at a time instead of 1. So mixing that with Protector Posture allows Vulpaphylas to also spread not only a crap load of magnetic, but also a crap load of 20% final critical buffs through Protector Posture. So, okay. Let's go into Sly Vulpaphyla. He's our first little guy here. So, Sly Vulpaphyla reduces enemy accuracy, but only when the pet is down. This is like his devolution mod, is when he's downed, enemies will have 20% reduced accuracy. It's kind of nice. Vulpaphylas do go down kind of often. You almost build them to go down because they usually have the devolution effects. Well, some of them you actually want to keep up. But the Sly Vulpaphyla, while he's down, you get minus 20% enemy accuracy. There's a caveat to this, though, and that is if you shoot or melee attack, it goes away. So, again, we're looking at an effect that only happens if you're a caster frame. Except this time it's not invisibility, it's just 20% reduced accuracy. If I had to compare that to being invisible, I would rather be invisible, like through either the Shade or the Hurus Kubro. So, alright, so you have to use a caster frame to get this minus 20% accuracy. It only happens when the pet's down. And then the other thing with Sly is that he provides frequent and brief periods of enemy de-aggros through another one of his precepts. That's nice, and that will actually affect anything. You can use any kind of a Warframe, and that will be a benefit. It's just that the other half, the other precept that he has is only going to work on a caster frame. So you might as well use a caster frame if you're using Sly Vault. I think it's... Oh, he's okay. I think he has a use. I'm going to put him in C tier. Again, I think it's a narrow use. You have to use a caster frame. The effect is, I would say, worse than being invisible through Shade or through the Hurus, which is also going to be for caster frames. So I feel like the only time you'd pick Sly is if you don't have Shade or the Hurus Kubro. Then Sly would probably be your top tier choice on a caster frame. But if you have Shade or the Hurus, it's just going to be a better pick there. So, yeah, Sly is okay. He just has a very narrow usage. So that's why he gets put in C tier there. Okay, next we have the Croissant Vulpaphyla here. So what does the Croissant Vulpaphyla do? He provides mass puncture procs. Well, guess what? Vulpaphylas and Kavats, they already can provide mass puncture procs because they have access to Swipe and they have access to Protector Posture. So they're already doing puncture procs to like everything all the time with their basic attacks. And guess what? Puncture only stacks to 5. Oh, so their Protector Posture gives you 4 forced puncture procs, and Swipe lets you hit 5 dudes at a time. So 5 dudes at a time are getting 4 puncture procs applied to them. It only stacks to 5, so like, what is this dude gonna do? Give you 1 puncture proc, which gives you 5% final critical, which is pretty dookie. Croissant Vulpaphyla is gonna be our next pet that goes into the D tier. The only good thing about the Croissant Vulpaphyla is that he's a Vulpaphyla and he has access to Martyr Symbiosis, but all the other Vulpaphylas do too, so why not use the other Vulpaphylas? If you look at the specific Croissant things that he gets, like, him providing puncture procs where you already do that through swipe and protector posture, there's really no use for Croissant Vulpaphyla here. So he ends up in D tier with Jin. Okie dokie, let me turn my page and we'll get up to the next pet, which I'm going to assume is going to be the next Vulpaphyla. Panzer Vulpaphyla. Let's start him in utility, just talk about him. So he is going to be the best viral spreader through the use of his 2 preset mods in the game. So they make spores very similar to sarin spores. They spread. They'll go places where you don't even have line of sight to, which is kind of why he's the best viral spreader. Yeah, really powerful pet. Spreads viral. If you didn't know, viral, even a single proc of viral gives you 100% more damage to health. Any more viral procs will give 25%, stacking all the way up to 10 stacks, which will be 325%. Yeah. So first stack is 100%. Other stacks are plus 25% each. So best viral spreader. Viral is extremely important, very powerful. He is going to be S tier. I'm going to put him under Nautilus. I think that Panzer is more prolific than Nautilus is. Like Panzer, you can pretty much put on every pet, or not every pet. You can put on every Warframe in the game and they will get value. Whereas Nautilus, you don't. You're not going to get value out of a primer on every Warframe. Not every Warframe is a melee melee Warframe. But I think that melee Warframes are almost always going to pick Nautilus, whereas like not every Warframe is going to pick Panzer. So I think I'll put him under Nautilus there. It doesn't really matter. He's S tier. He's amazing. Really good viral spreader. He also, of course, gets access to Martyr Symbiosis, just like all the other Vulpaphylas, which is another really powerful effect. So just a really solid pet in the game. Okie dokie, that's it for the Vulpaphylas. What do we got here next? We got the Helminth Charger. Oh my goodness, this is a interesting one here. So let me pull the Helminth Charger up, and then I'm going to kind of explain what I have here. Access to strain mods. Okay, there are 4 strain mods in the game, and they go on different things. So the Helminth Charger can put one on himself. The Helminth Charger's claws can put a strain mod on. Your melee weapon, I'm talking about your Warframe's melee weapon, can put a strain mod on. And your Warframe himself can put a strain mod on. Now, the Warframe putting a strain mod on is kind of a bit of a big ask. Like most Warframe builds are not going to have a free slot to put a random strain mod on. But as long as you have the other 3 on, he's usually good enough. Now, what does Helminth Charger do? Well, strain mods can add plus crit damage to your melee. And I have a big note section written for the Helminth Charger. He is never going to be as good of a melee pet as like the Nautilus or the Dirija. However, he still has a use case, and that's because, so he gives you crit damage to your melee, and the use case is frames who use a melee stat stick, because that crit damage can go into the stat stick, which can indirectly go into your ability that you're spamming. So for a frame that uses a stat stick, and that stat stick, affects an ability, and in that stat stick's profile, you need crit damage for some reason, Helminth Charger is a good option. That is a very narrow use case, and that's why we're going to put him in C tier, because not like a lot of the Warframes in the game is not going to really need that. But there are going to be some that could make good use of Helminth Charger there. So he goes in C tier for us. Okay, next is going to be the Predicites. Let me read my little thing here. So we got Predicites. All Predicites have access to Volatile Parasite. Volatile Parasite does some light crowd control, and it also does some light viral spreading. So anything I say forward is going to be what I say, and also that there. So light crowd control, light viral spreading. Okay, let's start with Vizier Predicite. Vizier Predicite is going to give you HP regeneration, a small amount of it, not a lot of HP regen, and infrequent corrosive procs on a few enemies. Ooh, doesn't sound very good. I can't even think of a use case for that. Small amount of HP regen, I don't even need that on a Naros, which is an HP Warframe. And just infrequent corrosive procs on a few enemies. That's so weird. I don't know. Visor is just in a bad state. So Visor is going to be in D. He's very... I can't even think of a possible use case for this dude. Okie dokie. That's going to bring us to our next Predacite, which is the Medjay Predacite. What does the Medjay Predacite provide? He opens enemies up to finishers. That's pretty much it. Now, I'm going to put him in D tier. There was a commenter that had actually a use case for the Medjay. I think it's still a very narrow, and I think it's so narrow I'm going to still keep him in D tier. But it was a use case. He said that, I'm not familiar with Kumei or Kumai, I don't know how to say her name, but I think one of Kumei's challenges is like get finisher kills or something like that. So the Medjay maybe could possibly combo with Kumei or Kumai, but like I feel like that's so narrow of a use case. I feel like even Komai probably wouldn't pick the Medjay just for that one challenge. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. I don't play Kumai, so let me know how useful you think the Medjay could possibly be to Kumai. Or if you could think of any other use cases that you would need for enemies opened up to finishers. That's pretty much the whole Medjay shtick, and I can't really think of anything that would be of great benefit. And that's why we're putting him in D tier here. All right, finally we got the Pharaoh Predacite. He's going to be the last Predacite we have. Let me turn my page. Alrighty, so the Pharaoh Predacite, he's going to do light viral spreading. He does his own light viral spreading, as well as, like I said before, Volatile Parasite that all of the Predacites can do also does light viral spreading. Now, of course, he's not going to be nearly as good of a viral spreader as Panzer. So it's very light viral spreading, whereas like Panzer is like heavy viral spreading. So light viral spreading. He also adds Toxic to your weapon, which is a really cool effect, actually. There's a lot of like weird things you can do with that. And that Toxic will actually combine with elements. So you can go into a mission with just cold on your weapon, and he'll make it into viral, basically. Or just electric on your weapon, and he'll make it into corrosive. You know what I mean there. So he can provide Toxic to your weapons, and he does some light viral spreading. I think he's pretty decent. I think he has a good use in the game. I don't think he's build defining though. So for that reason, I'm going to put him in B tier. Use cases for the Pharaoh Predacite. I mean, pretty much all Warframes are going to want viral spreading. It's just that Panzer's going to do it better. But he also gives you Toxic, so like where Panzer doesn't do that. So yeah, I mean, I think use cases are pretty much like all Warframes could probably make use of Pharaoh Predacite. I just don't think his effect is going to be as powerful and like game-breaking as some of these other effects that we have seen up top here. Okay. Next, we're going to have the Hound. The Hound actually didn't have a PNG file like for the entire Hound, so I kind of Frankenstein this Hound together. I think I made his head too small, though. So I'm sorry for the ugly Hound here. So like we said with the MOAs, they're able to use link mods, which can help with survivability, and they also use robotic mods. So, all right, what does the Hound do? Well, the Hound is the best ranged primer in the entire game due to Synergized Prospectus precept combined with Manifold Bond. And the use cases would be you combo this with a ranged weapon that has multiplicative gun CO, and you are God tier. You're blazing away. And that's why the Hound is going to be S tier. Yeah, really good range primer. Really good range primer. Nautilus can also range prime, just not as good as Hound because that Synergized Prospectus is going to shoot out. It's actually like going to go and seek enemies and bounce around and things like that. But Nautilus with the group and being able to pull enemies up to 30 meters away, I mean, he's coming close. He's coming close. I don't know if they give any buffs to Nautilus, he might beat out the Hound, but the Hound is still really good range primer. And anytime you're using a weapon that has multiplicative gun CO, you want to be probably using the Hound with it. All right. Next we have Smita Kavat. Oh my goodness, what did they do to my boy Smita? Smita used to be S tier. It used to be like bring Panzervault Philo or bring Smita, and that was like your only choices in the game. And yeah, now it's a little bit different. So, Smita Kavat, he provides you with a random buff through his Charm precept. The strongest buff that you can get is a 30-second crit chance buff. Now I did some of the math, and I want to like let you know the math here, and it's going to kind of, I hope this math will let you know why I think I'm going to put him where I am. So on average, you will get this 30-second crit chance buff once every 4.5 minutes. Oh, that's pretty bad. Now this Smita also has a loot buff in the random charm buffs that it can provide. But this loot buff has been nerfed to only give one instance of the node's rare loot, which also includes Steel Essence. So that loot buff has also been kind of nerfed. Use cases would be probably using him to farm. I think other pets are probably going to farm better than him, though. There's a few other loot pets in the game now. And keep in mind, all of the Sentinels can also use spare parts plus Manifold Bond to also get loot. Smita Kavat can get the system's rare resources, including Steel Essence. So, like, that's one niche that he has. It's just been nerfed so much. You get, like, one instance of it. I feel like I'm going to put him in C, but I feel like there's a case that he could even be in D tier, honestly. Because the actual, like, crit chance buff, like, anything that actually increases your power as a Warframe, it's so random, and it only happens on average once every 4.5 minutes. Like, any other pet would give you better value. I think like Jin would even get you better value than that. I don't know. I'm going to put him in C just because maybe as a loot pet, he has some potential, but he easily could be in D. All right. That is Smita. Oh, you know what? I should have went over what Kavats. I went over all the other ones. So what do Kavats do in general? So let's just go over that real quick. I'm sorry. All right. So Kavats obviously can use Kavat specific mods, but one of the most important ones is Swipe. Swipe, like I said with Vulpaphilas, Swipe turns their basic attacks from hitting one dude into hitting up to 5 dudes at a time. And if you mix Swipe with Protector Posture, now you're putting on these 4 forced puncture procs on 5 dudes at a time, which is really good. So that's what Kavats in general can do, all 3 of them. All right, let's continue on with the Adarza Kavat here. Let me turn my page. All right, Adarza Kavat adds final critical chance to weapons with a 1/3 uptime. And his use case is going to be combo with weapons with poor base critical chance. So I'm going to put up an A tier because I believe that's where he should be. And let me explain this a little bit. You have to kind of understand final critical chance. It's not the same as critical chance. So final critical chance just adds like that number to whatever their critical chance is. So if like the Sporothrix, for instance, has 1% critical chance, well, the Adarza can give 60% final critical chance. So it just is 60 plus the one that the Sporothrix has, which would be a 61% critical chance. So all of a sudden, the Sporothrix, which actually has a garbage critical chance, is now like critting more often than it's not critting. So that's why final critical is really, really good, especially on weapons that are bad in crit chance. Now, there are specific weapons in the game where DE decided to do something a little bit spicy, right? Like they gave them really bad crit chance, but they gave them really good crit multipliers. One of the most common weapons that everyone knows is the Nucor. The Nucor is like that really bad crit chance, amazing crit multiplier. And so by adding final critical on those type of weapons, you are like ridiculously increasing the strength of those weapons. Now, Adarza Kavat by himself, I don't believe is build defining. However, if you mix Adarza Kavat with other forms of final critical chance, you do start having a build defining like thing. You know what I'm saying? Adarza Kavat is going to give you that 60 final critical. Unfortunately, it's only with a 1/3 uptime. 2/3 of the time, it's not going to be there. However, you mix him with Protector Posture, which adds 4 forced puncture procs on 5 enemies around you every time you whack something. Puncture procs are also 5% final critical buffs each puncture proc, so up to a 25% because puncture maxes out at 5 stacks. So Adarza is providing puncture procs, which is final critical. He's providing this his Precept, which is a 60% final critical with a 1/3 uptime. And you can mix that with other things like Arcane Avenger is an arcane that can go on your Warframe, which is 45% final critical. There are other weird forms of final critical that I just can't think of off the top of my head. Let me know in the comments if you can think of them. I think Harrow's 4 is also final critical. So yeah, you could make those really bad crit chance weapons really good, especially the ones that have good crit multipliers. So yeah, Darza is going to be an A tier. Just keep in mind that, you know, if you just plop a Darza on a new core, it's not going to make the new core godlike. You would also probably want to use like Arcane Avenger, and then then probably would be godlike. So that's why Adarza is an A. I'm sorry about it. Maybe I talked too long about Adarza. Let's continue on to Vaska here. Okay, Vaska Kavat. What does he provide? He revives its owner when you die. And notably, it revives you quicker than Sentinels do, because Sentinels have access to an auto-revive called Sacrifice, except when Sentinels want to revive you through Sacrifice, they kind of have to do this like interpretive dance over your face and like teabag you for a few seconds, and then finally they will revive you. Well, Vaska Kavat is pretty much like an auto-revive. It just instantly revives you when you go down. So really good self-revive. Now, personally, I feel like that's building for failure. Like, I'm not going to personally take a Vaska Kavat with me. I would rather something else that actually affects gameplay and makes me stronger than just something that revives me when I die. However, at least it serves a purpose. There are specific game modes that really punish you if you go down, like Elite Deep Archimedia, Archon Hunt, things like that. They punish you if you go down. If you have kind of an asshole team and they don't revive you, you could just lose everything. And so Vaska Kavat can kind of be like an insurance for those game modes. Again, I still wouldn't bring it myself. I really almost want to put him in D tier, but at least he has a purpose. Probably more than the Smita, so I'm going to put him over the Smita there. So that's all the Kavats. What do we got next here? We got the Kubros. Oh, we're almost done. We got 5 Kubros left. So what do Kubros have that are special? Well, the Kubros are beasts. Something probably to note that I didn't say before is all the beasts, so like the Predicites, the Kavats, the Kubros, anything that's not a robot, any beast can also use retriever mods. And retriever mods give you more loot, which is really nice. So the Kubros, of course, they can use retriever mods, just like all the other beasts can. They also have access to the Mecha set. The Mecha set is similar to Contagious Bond. It's kind of just helps to spread statuses, and it almost acts like a mini nuke as well for your pet. So really powerful there. Okay, let's start with the Raxakubro. Now, the Raxakubro is going to be a Kubro that restores your shields. Remember how we talked about Taxon and how this dude restores your shields, but it's kind of meh, and you have to be making sure you fully armor strip everyone? Well, Raxakubro is just going to restore your shields regardless. He just restores 300 shields. End of story. So he's going to be used for shield gators. The negative, you know, comparing Raxa to the Taxon, you can't make his shield restoration any quicker. You know, you can't use Manifold Bond with Raxa, and so he can't be restoring your shields every second like Taxon technically could. It's just that he has less of a narrow use case than Taxon does, because you don't need to be full stripping dudes. He's just going to give you shield when you need it. So that's why Raxa, I think, is in B tier. He's just a solid pet. His use case is going to be for shield gators. He's just going to give you 300 shields. So obviously you wouldn't use him on Hildren, who has 10,000 shields. You know, 300 shields when your Hildren has 10,000 is not going to do anything. But if you're a shield gator who just needs to top off like base shields, really good pet. All right, Horus Kubro. Oh my goodness, he's going straight to S tier. Close to the top too. Probably like, I don't know. It's hard to compare these because they do different things, actually, these guys here. But let's just put them here. We're going to randomly put them in between Panzer and Hound. So the Horus Kubro, remember how we were talking about Shade and how Shade can make you invisible? Well, Horus Kubro does the same thing. He makes you invisible. You can't shoot or melee attack. So this is only for a caster. Just like Shade. Shade is the exact same way. So it's only for a caster Warframe, but he's going to make you completely invisible. And he's a Kubro, which means that while he's invisible too, he can still attack. So he has more offensive capabilities than the Shade does, because the Shade won't attack while you're invisible. Horus also has the Mecha set, which gives him more offensive capabilities. So he has more offensive capabilities than the Shade. That's why I believe the Horus is slightly better than the Shade. The only time you would use the Shade over the Hearse is if you really want Guardian. Of course, Hearse can't use Guardian. But otherwise, I think the Hearse is going to be better than the Shade there. So Hearse goes into S tier. Use case is going to be on caster Warframes like Protea, for instance. So, all right, go to my next page, and we have 3 more Kubros. The next 2 Kubros are going to be loot Kubros. So these are actually kind of cool. We're going to have the Chessa first here. The Chessa and the Sahasa are both loot Kubros. So Chessa provides you some light crowd control through one of their precepts. And their other precept, Retrieve, also increases your loot. So it acts almost like Necros' Desecrate, where there's like a 45% chance to get extra loot. Not exactly though, right? Because like Necros' Desecrate like targets every corpse around you. This is like targets one corpse, right? So small chance. Is it like absolutely amazing as a loot pet? Not really. You're probably actually going to get most of your loot through Retrieve. So you would use Retrieve, or not Retrieve, sorry, the Retriever mods. So you use a Retriever mod plus his precept of Retrieve. So comboing them together, you can get some nice loot there. I think he's got a use. He's definitely better than the Smita. He's got a use. He's better than the Smita. I don't think he's amazing. I feel like the Retriever mod is nice, but you can put the Retriever mod on anything. You can put a Retriever mod on the Panzer Phyla. So, the actual precept of Retrieve it's okay. 45% chance. All right, let's go over Sahasa. So Sahasa increases loot through his Dig precept. And this is where I want to kind of distinguish Sahasa compared to Chessa. So the Dig precept, he's going to dig in the ground and he pulls up 2 to 3 items. And this is where it's a little bit different. The items that are picked he prioritizes what your Warframe needs, which is going to be health orbs, energy orbs, ammo, or even life support, which is really cool. Now, he can give you different things too. Like he's not always going to give you that. He can give you just like random crap as well, but he's going to be prioritizing things you need. So if he sees that you are not at max energy, he's going to give you energy before he gives you like polymer bundles, right? So I think for like endurance content, I feel like he provides your Warframe more power. However, if you actually are just going in to like get garbage, like you just need some extra polymer bundles, maybe Chessa would be better, right? Because he's just going to be pulling up random crap. Whereas Sahasa a lot of times will be pulling up like energy orbs, health orbs, and ammo. But with a mindset like with endurance and like level cap, like being able to pull up energy orbs like is really nice. I don't know. I feel like Sahasa is better than Chessa. But if you are like literally going in there to pick up like garbage, like polymer bundles and stuff, like Chessa might be better. All right, we got Seneca next here. Seneca is the last Kubro we're going over. So Seneca is a good status spreader through his precept Savagery. Savagery is kind of cool. So he kind of like teleports and like attacks a bunch of dudes at the same time. And any dude he hits will actually do his melee mod stuff. So they can be doing the Bell Ringer magnetic strike or magnetic whatever combo where they're applying a lot of magnetic procs. And you can also combo this with the protector posture to apply puncture procs as well. So he's a really good status spreader. I'm going to put him in B tier. The issue though with Seneca is that he attacks, I believe it's either 6 or 8. I'm just going to say 8. I think he attacks 8 dudes and he's like putting all these statuses on things and it's through a precept. The thing you have to consider is that you have to compare it to like all of the Kavats. They're able to use Swipe with Protector Posture, and Swipe is just their basic attack. It's not a precept that actually has a cooldown. It's just a basic attack that can hit 5 dudes and apply all those statuses. So like the Seneca's status spreading compared to just a basic Kavat, like using Swipe with Protector Posture, is almost like the same, except he has to use a whole precept to do it. I think he's good. But I don't think he can really be any better than B tier. So yeah, that's where Seneca goes there. That's all the pets. Let's just go quickly and look at all of them and see if we can maybe move them around. Smita, again, I almost want to put into D tier. Chessa and Sahasa, you probably could consider these guys D tier. If you're at endgame and you have like everything in the game, I think Chessa easily could be D tier. Sahasa at least has some kind of a use though, because like he's not just giving you garbage polymer bundles, like he's actually giving you like energy orbs, health orbs, stuff like that. Vasca probably could be D tier just because you're kind of building for failure if you need a revive. Helmet Charger has an extremely narrow use, but you could make use of that narrow use. Slide Phyla has probably an even more narrow use than Helmet Charger, because part of his narrow use is that you also don't have access to Shade or Horus Kubro. So, I think he's actually worse than Helmet Charger there. Taxon has a pretty narrow use too. Could technically be better than the Raxakubro. It's just that you need to make sure that you're you have a consistent armor stripper. Rax is really nice. Seneca's good, but sometimes will get overshadowed by just the basic attacks that all Kavats can do. Rex is always nice. Pharaoh is a solid pet. Not necessarily like the best pet for any particular build, but just a solid pet. Moa has a lot of utility because he has a lot of different precepts. Carry is just always good, kind of similar to Pharaoh, just always good. Darza, really good final critical. Shade, we went over, kind of gets overshadowed by Horus, but if you needed Guardian, you'd pick Shade. Worm is good for removing statuses, which is not going to be good for every build, but a lot of builds that need status removal, it will be kind of game defining for those. Death Cube is either low S or the top of A, one or the other. It could go either way, honestly. I'm going to keep him at S, but he could easily be top of A as well. Dirge is good, but gets overshadowed by Nautilus. However, there is like a case to be made that maybe on like tight claustrophobic maps, the pulling of Nautilus might be a hindrance, so Dirige might still be better. Hound is best range primer. Horus Kubro is going to be the caster frame's best friend to make you invisible. Panzerwelpfeile is the best viral spreader in the game, and Nautilus is going to be the best melee primer, as well as being just an okay primer in general, even for ranged weapons. And yeah, that's a tier list there. I think we pretty much got close to what everyone should be at. Sonica, I'm not really super happy. Maybe he should be like top of C instead of B, because if you think about it, the Sonica providing all of those puncture procs, like when you compare him to the other stuff, like I mean, the Smita basically does the same thing. So why is Sonica over the Smita? I don't know. Maybe we should put the Sonica like in C as well. But yeah, I think this is pretty much what my tier list is going to look like. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you liked the video, consider giving it a like. If you haven't subbed yet, consider subbing or tell me what I can do to earn your sub. And I hope you guys have an amazing day. All right. Bye.